Hello, Honors Math. I hope you are all doing well. So today's video, which is Wednesday, April 22nd, we are going to be focusing on negative exponents again, but now we're going to add in division, okay? And then what we'll have to do is just start practicing all the exponents. So we're almost done with the new material for exponents, which is a good thing, okay? One thing I want to mention is please make sure you watch this video entirely and listen carefully to it and do the problems as I ask, because I will tell you guys, I am noticing some of you are just not giving me the best quality work that you can, which means it's very obvious that some of you are not watching the videos very carefully, or you're trying to do the problems without watching videos. I can tell you I was a little disappointed in last week, your weekly skills, the weekly skills 5 that I graded. We're just not giving the best quality work. And one of the things that concerns me is you guys are honors math and you're supposed to take honors algebra next year. And they're going to ask me from the high school, do these kids still belong taking honors algebra next year? Well, for some of you, if I see the quality of work to continue the way it is, I'm going to have to say, no, I really don't think they should take honors algebra next year. So please give me the quality of work that I know that you know I expect. Okay, for this first problem, there are no negative exponents in it. So this one is just reviewing, how do we do exponents with division, okay? And we alluded to this last week, but let's go ahead and just review again. So when you have this problem, remember we're going to be playing the game with all of our exponents, and wherever the exponent wins, however it wins by how much it wins by how many, that's where it goes. So I'm going to start this problem. So 4 squared over 4 to the 4th. Okay, so they both have like bases. I'm not going to multiply them out and do 16 over whatever 4 to the 4th is. I'm going to simplify first. So if I have 4 squared and 4 to the 4th, the bottom 4 wins by 2. So I get 4 to the 2nd on the bottom. All right, now if I look at my x's, x to the 9th and x to the 3rd on the bottom. So there are 6 more x's on top, so the top wins by 6. All right, if I look at my y's, I have y to the 3rd on top, y to the 9th on the bottom y wins by 6. Z to the 5th over z to the 4th, the top z wins by 1. So therefore we get z to the 1st. Now, I'm not going to leave my answer like this. I'm going to do what I can do here. So my final answer is just x to the 6th z, because I don't put the 1 on the z. 4 squared, because I never leave exponents that can be multiplied out. So 4 squared is 16, y to the 6th. And that's my final answer to that problem. Okay, here's problem number 2. And now we have division and we have negative exponents. And in case I didn't mention it, but I hope you read it in the agenda, you should be taking notes. And then, of course, you're going to submit the notes as your assignment today. Sorry, I failed to mention that. But hopefully you knew that because it was in the agenda. All right, so here we go. So how do we do this problem? So first of all, I am going to circle my coefficients because I mentioned last week that coefficients do not follow exponent rules. So if I look at negative 48 over 52, I'm going to reduce that. And the first thing I would see, because I probably wouldn't see that it's anything else, I would probably divide by 2. Which that would give me negative 24, and it would give me 26. But then if you notice, they divide by 2 again. So that's negative 12 over 13. And if you don't simplify all the way, of course, your problem would be wrong. Okay, so now what are we going to do with all these variables? So let's remember last week we talked about negative exponents means reciprocal. So if x to the negative 6 is in the top, that means it's got to go to the bottom, and when it does, it becomes a positive, okay? And then I'm going to look at the x to the negative 9th that's on the bottom. Well, it's a negative exponent, so that means it needs to flip. So it's in the bottom, it needs to go to the top, okay? So if we look at the y's, y to the 3rd has a positive exponent on it, so that means that's going to stay right where it's at. And then y to the negative 4th has a negative exponent, so it needs to move to the top. And yep, it's okay if we have 2 of the same variables in the same place. We'll end up combining those. All right, so now what do? Well, we get negative 12 over 13. Okay, so now everything's got a positive exponent, so now we play the game. X to the ninth over x to the sixth. The x to the ninth on top wins by 3. So we have x to the third on top. And then all the y's are in the top, so I don't play the game. I actually just put them together. So my final answer to this problem is negative 12 x cubed y to the 7th over 13. All right, so here's problem number 3. Now, if you're ready to try this on your own, then go ahead and copy it down and pause the video and work it out. And then come back and let's go over it together. All right, so again, I'm going to circle my coefficients. And negative 28 over negative 36, of course, they're not going to flip-flop because they're negative. That just means they're negative. So 2 negatives make a positive, so I know those negatives are gone. 28 and 36 are both divisible by 4. So 28 divided by 4 is 7, and 36 divided by 4 is 9. So I have 7/9. Okay, so now I'm ready to focus on my variables. So m to the negative third, that's a negative exponent, so that needs to go to the bottom. M to the ninth is on the bottom, and it has a positive exponent, so I'm going to leave it alone. Okay, if I look at my n's, this n on top has an imaginary 1 on it. It's positive, so I'm going to leave it right where it's at. N to the negative third needs to go to the top and become positive. All right, now I'm ready to look at the p's. Well, both p's are negative exponents, so that means they're just going to flip-flop places. So the p to the negative 6 is going to go to the top and become a positive exponent. And the p to the negative fourth has a negative exponent, so it's going to go to the bottom, so it has a positive exponent. All right, so here's where we're at. So the first thing you do is simplify your coefficients, then you move your negative exponents. Now we start playing the game. You can't do all of those at once, by the way. Okay, so we have 7/9. All right, so all my n's are on top. So I have a total of 4 n's on top. All my m's are on the bottom, so that means I have 12 m's on the bottom. And then p to the 6 over p to the 4th, the top p wins by 2, so it's p squared on top. And there's my final answer. All right, here's problem number 4. So this time I really think you should be able to copy it down and try it on your own. But then, of course, come back and go through it with me. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video and work it out. All right, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at my coefficients. So this time I've got some exponents on my coefficients. So now that they have exponents on the coefficients, now we got to follow the exponent rules. So 6 to the negative second is going to go to the bottom and become 6 squared, and I'll end up simplifying that later. 3 to the negative second, I'm going to put that on top, and that becomes 3 squared. So see how that even if a coefficient has a negative exponent, we're going to follow the exponent rules. All right, so let's see. X to the third is going to stay exactly where it's at. X to the ninth is going to stay exactly where it's at because both of them had positive exponents, so they don't move. Again, I take care of my coefficients, then I move my negative exponents, then I start playing the game and simplifying. Again, do not try to do all these steps at one time. All right, so y to the negative fourth, that's going to go to the bottom and become a positive exponent. Y to the negative 6 is going to go to the top and become a positive exponent. All right, so now if I look at my z's, both of them have negative exponents. That means they're both going to flip-flop. So this one goes to the bottom, and this one goes to the top. Okay, and I'm sure some of you are going, hey, wait a minute, I can get rid of those, which you can, but again, don't try to do too many things at once. Trust me, I know what I'm talking about. All right, so now, 3 squared, that's 9, and 6 squared is 36. Now I need to tell myself that I'm eventually going to come back and probably simplify those. All right, if I look at my x's and I think to myself, x to the third next to the ninth, which one wins by how many? The bottom wins by 6. Okay, if I look at my y's, which y wins by how many? The top by 2. And then my z's, if they're both 2, they cancel out, which means I have no z's in my answer, not even one. Okay, so I'm almost done. The only thing I need to do now is I need to look at my coefficient, 9 and 36. That simplifies. 9 goes into 36 4 times. So therefore, my answer is on top, all I have is y squared. I don't need to put a 1. for the 9, it's just y squared. And then on the bottom, the 36 became a 4. And then x to the 6th. So my answer is y squared over 4x to the 6th. Okay, so this problem is where I say we're going to start reviewing and doing dividing and negative exponents at the same time. So now we've got power to a power, we've got division, we've got negative exponent. We almost got it all, okay? So where do we start? Well, we start with the power to a power. So we're going to start on top, and we're going to say to ourselves, okay, power to a power. So what that means is, that means that negative 2, eventually I'm going to make it to the third power. Again, I'm not going to try to do anything right now. X to the negative third to the third is x to the negative 9th. Y to the negative 4 to the third is y to the negative 12th. Oh, sorry, it looked messy. Z squared to the third is z to the 6th. Okay, so on the bottom, there is no power to a power, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to write down the bottom. I'm not going to try to do anything yet, okay? I cannot stress this enough, and the algebra people would tell you too. When they try to do too much and you don't listen to what I say, you make silly mistakes, okay? You got all the time in the world right now. Please make sure you put the time into this. All right, so what are we going to do now? Well, if I look at negative 2 to the third, it's not a negative exponent. It just means negative 2 to the third. So negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2, I've got negative 8. Okay, and again, I always focus on my coefficients first. And then I've got negative 10 on the bottom. I'm not going to do anything to it. I'll worry about simplifying those later. All right, so let's look at my x's. So I've got x to the negative 9th on top. So what's that mean? That goes to the bottom. I've got x to the 4th on the bottom. Well, it doesn't have a negative exponent, so it's going to stay where it's at. All right, let's look at the y's. Y to the negative 12th means it's going to go to the bottom, so it becomes a positive exponent. Y to the negative 6 is on the bottom. That means it's going to go to the top and become a positive exponent. All right, z to the 6th, positive exponent. It's going to stay right where it's at. Z to the negative 9th on the bottom, because it has a negative exponent, it's going to come to the top. Okay, so see how in that step I got rid of all my negative exponents. Okay, so now I'm ready to start playing the game and simplifying. So if I look at my coefficient first, negative 8 over negative 10, 2 negatives make a positive. I can take a 2 out of each of those, and that gives me 4/5. Okay, if I look at my x's, they're all on the bottom, so I can't play the game. I just put them together, x to the 13th. And remember what I told you last week? I'm going to stop right now. If you end up with an answer with a negative exponent in it, you know you're wrong, okay? So just make sure you remember that. All right, ready for the y's. Sorry, that was a tangent. So if I look at my y's, y to the 6th over y to the 12th, if I play the game, the y to the 12th wins on the bottom by 6. And then all the z's are on the top, which means I'm just going to put them together, and it's z to the 15th. And there's my answer. Done. And when you write your answers, just so you know, you need to always put the coefficients in front, and then you need to try to put your variables in alphabetical order if like they're on the same level, okay? All right, here we go, number 6. All right, so this time we've got 2 powers to a power, and they have negative exponents. We got it all. All right, so again, you're just going to chunk it. It's really what you're going to do. You're going to chunk the problem. All right, so let's start on top and do the power to a power. So we've got 3. And we have it to the negative 2nd. So I'm just going to write that for now, and I'll worry about it later. X to the negative 4th to the negative 2nd. That's going to give me x to the 8th. Y to the 2nd to the negative 2nd. That's going to give me y to the negative 4th. Z to the 4th to the negative 2nd. It's going to give me z to the negative 8th. Negative 8. Can't read it. All right, so now let's look at the bottom. So the first thing you got to remember, last week I talked about that negative doesn't attach to the x. That's just a plain old negative 1. So I'm going to write negative 1 to the negative 3rd power. And again, I'll worry about that later. X to the 3rd to the negative 3rd is going to give me x to the negative 9th. Y to the negative 6th to the negative 3rd gives me y to the 18th. Z to the 7th to the negative 3rd gives me z to the negative 21st. Okay, so we got the power to a powers done. All right, so now we're going to start moving and grooving here, okay? So first of all, let's look at this 3 to the negative 2nd. Okay, well, what's that mean? Well, it means it goes to the bottom. So I'm going to put 3 to the negative second on the bottom and make it 3 to the second. Get rid of the negative exponent. Okay, if you look at that coefficient on the bottom, -1 to the negative third, what that means is we're going to move it to the top, but the -1 doesn't go away, just the negative exponent. So it's going to be -1 to the third. Okay? All right, so now let's look at the x's. So x to the 8th has a positive exponent, so it's going to stay right where it's at. X to the negative 9th has a negative exponent. It's on the bottom, so it comes to the top. All right. Y to the negative 4th, what's it going to do? It's going to go to the bottom and become a positive exponent. Y to the 18th has a positive exponent. It's on the bottom, so it's going to stay. Do you remember me last week saying positive exponents stay, negative exponents go? Obviously, you can see that's what's going on here, or at least I hope you do. All right, z to the negative 8th means that's going to move to the bottom. Z to the negative 21st means that's on the bottom. It's going to go to the top. Okay, so now we've done our power to a power. We've gotten rid of our negative exponents. Now we're ready to start simplifying and playing the game. All right, so -1 to the third. -1 times -1 times -1 is -1. 3 squared on the bottom is 9. Okay, now I'm ready to start with dealing with my variables. So if I look at my x to the 8th and x to the 9th, they're all on top, so I just add them together and put 17. All my y's are on the bottom, so I'm going to add them together. That's y to the 22nd. And then my z's are on different sides, so that means which one wins by how many? Play the game. Z to the 21st wins by 13, so z to the 13th on top. So that's one way you can write your answer. Or you could write just negative x to the 17th, z to the 13th, over 9, y to the 22nd. Or you could put the negative on the 9 and just write it like this. Any of those answers are exactly the same, and I would be happy with any of those answers that you got. Okay, I think we got one more today. All right, here we go, number 7. So again, why don't you try it by yourself and then come back and let's go over it together. All right, so I notice I've got some powers to a power, so of course that's where I'm going to start. So on the top, if I have 2 to the second to the negative third, that's going to give me 2 to the negative 6, and again, I'll worry about that all later. X to the negative second to the negative third gives me x to the 6th. Y to the third to the negative third gives me y to the negative 9th. And z to the 5th to the negative third gives me z to the negative 15th. Okay, on the bottom, we've got an exponent on the outside of 2. So 4 to the second gives me 4 to the 4th. X to the third to the second gives me x to the 6th. Y to the negative second to the second gives me y to the negative 4th. And remember, there's an imaginary 1 on this at z, so z to the first to the second gives me z squared. Okay, so now we're ready to start, like I said, moving and grooving here. You may think that's weird, but it's true. All right, 2 to the negative 6. What's going to happen there? We're going to put it on the bottom. 4 to the 4th. We're going to stay on the bottom. Okay, I'll worry about all that later. All right, so look at the x's. And you could even do this now if you wanted. I've got x to the 6 and x to the 6. X to the 6 on top, x to the 6 on the bottom. I don't have to move either one of those. But I also recognize, boom, they're gone. Okay? Y to the negative 9th is going to go to the bottom. Y to the negative 4th is going to go to the top. Z to the negative 15th is going to go to the bottom. And z squared's on the bottom, so it's going to stay on the bottom. Okay, so now we're ready to start doing the simplifying here. Oh, and of course, when I need it, my calculator is never nearby. So if I take 2 to the 6th, I know that's 8 times 8, so that's 64. And if I take 4 to the 4th, I know that's 16 and 16, so that's 256. And then, okay, I'm going to pause and get my calculator. Okay, so of course I've got this crazy big number. So 2 to the 6th times 4 to the 4th came out to be 16,384. That was lovely. Anyway, all right, back to where we were. So if I look at my y's, I have y to the 4th and y to the 9th. So the y to the 9th on the bottom wins by 5. And then all the z's are on the bottom. So that gives me z to the 17th on the bottom. Now, interesting that this problem came up, because if my algebra would have had this class, yep, I'm talking about algebra right now, they would have thought the answer was just 16,384 y to the 5th z to the 17th. But that's not the case, because look, they're all on bottom. So the question is, what's on top? The answer is this, not just the bottom. So your final answer to this problem is 1 over 16,384 y to the 5th z to the 17th. And I'm sure somebody out there is like, well, what's the difference? Why can't I just leave the 1 off? Well, guys, it's a fraction. 1 over something is totally different than not. So in other words, if you try to tell me 2 and 1/2 are the same thing, I think you would disagree with that. Okay, so please make sure you submit your notes from today, and then tomorrow you'll be doing an assignment over this. And then Friday, we're going to go back to reviewing. And I will fair warn you now, there's going to be a little video on Friday, because I'm gathering we need to maybe review a few skills that we've seen on weekly skills and last week's weekly skills. So anyway, have a good day. Make sure you submit your notes and make sure you put quality work into your work. Thank you.